They discuss a young girl named Maryam Pougetoux who's been daring to wear her headscarf while being filmed for a documentary.
Although daring is a strong word, she just happened to be wearing a headscarf while being filmed in a documentary.
The crimes of being a Muslim, I guess.
In France.
Let's go ahead and have a listen.
Can you first describe what you do?
Okay, I'm Yasser Louati. I'm a French human rights and civil liberties activist. My work focuses mainly on racism and repression, and I'm the co-founder of the Justice and Liberties for All Committee.
And can you explain what the whole Pougetoux affair is?
Well, the Pougetoux affair actually is the new episode of the ongoing identity war, which is raging in France. So the Sixth Channel interviewed a student union leader, as they were mobilizing against the Macron reforms, and whatever she said was obliterated, and the whole country focused. Actually, pressure groups focused on what she was wearing, meaning a headscarf. And the debate went from the student mobilization at La Sorbonne University to Mrs. Maryam Pougetoux having to justify herself for wearing it and being thrown under the bus by both, for example, which is sad enough, the Minister for Women's Rights, Mrs. Marlène Schiappa, and of course the Minister of Interior, Gérard Collomb, among others.
Can you describe some of the reactions? Everything was centered around the fact that she was wearing a headscarf. Am I right?
Exactly. Everything was centered about, on her headscarf. Nothing about what she was saying or the mobilizations that she was leading. So, for example, the Minister of Interior, Gérard Collomb, compared her outfit to a call to join the Daesh terrorist group. Marlène Schiappa, criticized her twice and said that there was no place for her headscarf in public debate as a union leader. But this criticism, as you can see, actually, or I should say demonization, has been led by the left even before the right.
So you're saying it's not the far right that's egging this on?
No, absolutely not. Every single identity hysteria that has been sparked was sparked, especially this year, by the left, not any right-wing group or far-right one. No, it was the members of the Socialist Party, people who are revolving around Charlie Hebdo, people revolving about the pressure group called the Republican Spring, le Printemps Républicain, and the person who initiated the demonization campaign is a person called Laurent Bouvet, who is a notorious secular fundamentalist. To him, the definition of laïcité goes beyond the neutrality of the state, but also neutrality of public space. And all the campaigns he launched were singling out Muslim women.
And can you just describe what happened with Manel?
So Manel is a French singer who wears a headscarf, and she participated in a singing contest on television, and she was by far the best candidate. By far, she was having some outrageous scores, and she was singled out for wearing the headscarf by the Republican Spring and Laurent Bouvet. And of course, the demonization campaign lasted so long that she had no other solution but to resign from the contest, even though she was predestined to
France has had for quite a few years a complicated relationship with headscarves and laïcité, but it's still allowed to wear a headscarf in public spaces. So what did the debate center around?
France as a whole didn't really have a problem with the headscarf as a country. There have been attempts in the 80s to have it prohibited, and those attempts were in vain. The highest authorities in the countries backed the right of religious freedom and the right to wear it in public schools. But within 15 years, the tendency was reversed, and both the right and the left, the far right and the far left, agreed on singling out the Muslim headscarf. And as a matter of fact, in the early 2000s, the war against the headscarf was initiated by far left activists, right? They're not the far right. It was far left activists who were targeting high school students for wearing the headscarf. So today, there have been, what you're collecting today is actually a reframing of the racist narrative. Before it was, of course, the superiority of the white race over the rest. Then it was reframed as the superiority of one culture over the rest. And today, in the name of the so-called Republican ideals, you have to banish Muslim religious visibility.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard that there was quite a backlash against Maryam. Have people spoken out against that?
Actually, many people, I mean, like the public figures, they all agreed on singling her out and demonizing her. She found no support from the traditional political parties. Okay, she didn't find support either from the right or the left. She was singled out by Jean-Luc Mélenchon, the person who pretends to be France's Jeremy Corbyn or Bernie Sanders, the head of the.
He ran as a candidate, didn't he, in the last election?
Yes, in the last election, actually, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, singled out Muslim women for wearing the burkini, and today he did the same thing by targeting Maryam Pougetoux, which is actually an outrage because Jean-Luc Mélenchon is supposed to be the leader of the social movements. That's how he's posing, and he did the same thing as the others. He completely muted whatever mobilization she was leading, and started, as we say in French, yelling with the wolves. So Jean-Luc Mélenchon did that. Of course, former Prime Minister did it. Manuel Valls, Charlie Hebdo pictured her as a monkey.
That was actually my next question, because Charlie Hebdo, the French satirist magazine, they published a cartoon of her with a caricature of like ape-like coarse features. Has this caused outrage in France?
Actually, as you know, Charlie Hebdo, it's not the first time they do something outrageous and unacceptable. For example, it is one thing to stand for freedom of speech, but it's also that freedom of speech comes also with responsibility.
Like, are there people in the mainstream that have called out Charlie Hebdo or that have called out the backlash Maryam is receiving?
Yes, of course, but it's the same minority of public figures. Unfortunately, the media and our political figures have all, stood against her, and that's problematic.
What's their argument?
It's either laïcité, but what I don't mention laïcité is that because she wears a headscarf, she has no place in mobilization. And this again actually shows a crisis of the normalization of Islam. Why? Because Muslims are part of everyday life. They are no longer hiding or accepting to be like second-class citizens. And for the generations that accepted to, how can I say, pledge allegiance to white supremacy, they proved to us, when they are 60 today, that their choice was a failure, and that that the future lies with those who stand up and speak up and stand for whatever the Republic is proposing them in terms of rights and liberties.
Yasser, do you have you seen anything positive come out of this debate? My last question.
Actually, the positive debate is that the positive outcome of this debate is that other student unions have stood with Maryam Pougetoux, and that the people who stood with Maryam Pougetoux, they come from the radical tradition. So to me, to put it simply, the future of France does not lie with its elites, but lies with its radical grassroots movement.